is a British TV presenter, author and journalist. He made his name on the television screens of the UK, presenting shows about the history of these lands before stepping more into the political realm throughout the COVID years, where his opposition to government impositions and his weekly monologues on GB News brought him an enormous following. He's spoken out about the introduction of digital ID in the United Kingdom, and he joins us now. Neil, it's great to see you, mate. We spoke last week on your show about, the worst kept secret, digital ID, being a goal for Starmer's government. He's now announced it. Does it feel like 2020 to you, all over again?
It does, Gareth. Good to see you as always. I feel we're seeing a replay. It's the same wolf, different sheep's clothing. As I've attempted to make plain over the years, up until the whole COVID debacle, I was as asleep and unaware and distracted as the next person, really. But once I became aware of what was going on, it has since been relatively easy to keep seeing what is unavoidable once you learn the trick of it. And one of the mantras by which I live at the moment is it's never about what they say it's about. And I think in the case of what was attempted during the COVID years was nothing to do with public health and all about trying to seize control of everything that totalitarian types want, which is to say money and control of people's lives and all of the rest of it. And they tried to do it via a fake, a hoax pandemic. And when it came to the unwanted medical procedure, we found out subsequently that while we had been frightened into the belief that if we didn't take it, Granny would die, that we were taking it on behalf of other people to stop, because it would stop transmission. But that was utterly bogus. To the extent that sworn testimony by Pfizer showed that the thing hadn't even been designed to do that, so it was obviously never going to do it. And then you fast forward 4 or 5 years and you come to digital ID, and it's exactly the same, in as much as we're being told that this is the kind of this is going to inoculate Britain against unwanted arrivals, unwanted immigration. And that's not what it's been designed for. Digital ID has got nothing to do with stopping new people arriving, and it's all about taking control of the people who are actually already living within the porous borders of this island. And so, yes, in answer to your question, a rambling answer to your question there, they're trying to take us back to the mindset in which, the mindset I was in before I woke up.
Do you think it is solely, about control? Because like you say, it's clearly not about stopping mass immigration. I don't think anyone that's pro-digital ID actually believes it's to stop immigration anyway. Do you think that it's basically another step on the ladder to kind of be able to introduce other stuff? So like when we were talking last week, we were talking about the idea that basically you've got all these other things you want in. It's almost like they're pizza toppings and you need the base. And the base is digital ID. Do you think it's that important to them?
Yes, I think it comes down to something very fundamental that they need to institute, that they need to get in place, which is anathema to the controlling mindset, is independent thought and movement and decision making. They don't like people getting up to things that they don't control, and I think what you have in the digital ID, as has been said over and over, is might be seen as the key that locks the digital cage. And the infrastructure of the digital cage has been being built around us since I frankly don't know when, but for a long time. All of the pieces are in place, and if they can get everyone to take a digital ID, then the door clicks shut for all time. And I think I've begun thinking about it in terms of, let's say, a Monopoly board or the board of a game. And when you play Monopoly, you accept an avatar, a little dog, a battleship, a top hat, whatever. And you become that represents you on the board. And it's not you, you're identifying with that little bit of tin. and you move it around on the board. What you have with the big step up that is digital ID is that it means that you don't move your piece on the board. Your piece is on the board. You have consented to it representing you, in as much as by accepting a digital ID, you've said, yep, that's me, but you have no control over that piece. And other hands move it around the board on your behalf, tell you where you're going, and it's got nothing to do with you, what square you end up on, and the consequences thereof.
It's a really good analogy. And I suppose in that, essentially, if you don't follow the rules and you don't do as you're told, you get flicked off the board and you can no longer, play the role within society.
Yeah, I think Monopoly is very opposite as far as it goes. I mean, you could make it anything. You could make it any board game, but it's just that ultimately it all comes back to the bank.
Yeah.
Everybody, you start out with a little bit of money, and you're invited to think that you're getting money by chance or by tactics or whatever. But ultimately, at the end of a game of Monopoly, one person has everything and everyone else has nothing. The distinct difference is that you then decide to start the game of Monopoly again. I think when what will be achieved here is that there will be one owner of everything, and that's the last time the game will be played. Everybody else will just be left with nothing and their hands tied behind their backs.
Exactly. Go straight to jail. Do not pass go. Do not get
it all
200
works.
quid.
Monopoly works on every
It
level.
does. No, it does. What if it's allowed to pass? Because I'm a firm believer that we have to allow it to happen. I don't think someone like Keir Starmer is this all-powerful entity that can make it happen. So, if digital ID is allowed to pass by the population, what do you think that would mean? For free speech, for freedom of assembly, protest, for instance, for freedom to travel. Do you think it could morph into this, social credit system that we've been warning about?
Yes, I do. It's in many ways, I would say that's the $64,000 question. And people ask me, as I'm sure they do you, because like me, you're being whatever outspoken about it. And I'm sure lots of people come back at you and say, yes, Gareth, but what should we do? And I honestly can't quite conceptualise in my own head what will come to pass if everyone was to take a digital ID. I don't claim to be able to look into a crystal ball and see what that would look like. But oddly, ever since Keir Starmer stood up and said what he said, that you won't be able to work in Britain or do anything else unless you have a digital ID, unexpectedly, I felt the weight lifting off my shoulders. That's all I can say. I felt the yoke being taken off my shoulders, and I thought, no, it's going to be all right. This is not going to work. This is a step too far, whatever language you want to put on it. Because ultimately, it's for it to work, everyone, literally every last person, has to enter into some sort of state of suspended disbelief. We will only be subject to the controls that we believe in. And I can only say that I will not believe in it. I will not buy into it in any way. I just will not enter into the mindset that is that which is controlled by whatever, the Chinese-style social credit, the total surveillance state, digital ID, and all of the rest of it. I thoroughly believe that so many people, unlike what happened at the advent of the COVID debacle, when people like myself, and I think too many people at that point were still unaware. I think by now, so many people will refuse to comply with this, and it will be a block of people that's too many, and those people will find ways to transact. People in every sense of what transact means. People will find other ways to transact with one another, to relate to one another, to share ideas, to share skills, to find food, to find all the things that people need. So bizarrely, and against all my own expectations, when I heard what Keir Starmer was saying in that moment, while I might have expected to feel crushed by it, I felt entirely the opposite. I think this is the opening of the door, not the closing.
I'll be honest, I can relate to that. I think sometimes, if as an analogy, you were told that someone was going to punch you in the face at some point in the next few weeks, because that's what we had with digital ID, isn't it? It was like Starmer's expected to announce. Then you kind of build it up in your head, don't you, of what is this punch going to feel like? And then you get punched and you go, that's all right. It's not actually that bad, really. And like you say, you feel that weight lift. Okay, it's done now. Now let's get on with it, What are people saying in Scotland, Neil? And I asked that because obviously during COVID, which, I think we agree is it's almost like a rerun of it, it seemed that, England, Scotland and Wales, they seemed to see things very, very differently in terms of whether they were standing up and opposing, diktats from the government.
It's interesting to hear someone, from, on the other side of the border, as it were. It's interesting to hear that, that would a power the gift to give us to see ourselves as others see us, as Robert Burns said. It's always enormously illuminating to hear that. My sense of it is that, broadly speaking, I think the feeling of the Scots is the same as the feeling that's out there amongst the English and the Welsh and the Irish. I think most people, whether they have either the means or the willingness to speak out about it in a public forum, I think most people genuinely feel that they are being, the government, the authorities, the entities, the institutions have at some point become the enemy and not the ally. I think that's broadly the feeling. Now, having said that, things that have happened in the relatively recent past, which were part of divide and conquer. I mean, I've completely revisited now the way in which I think about things that were done, like the referendum in 2014 about whether or not Scotland would remain a part of the United Kingdom, the Brexit referendum in 2016. All of these divisive things where we're invited to think that we're not like them, and because we're not like them, we should be suspicious of them. And all of these I've revisited, and I see a lot of that, I think, with newly opened eyes. And I feel that there's... You said something, you mentioned that we spoke together on my channel a week or so ago, and you said something, you'd been watching, you'd got up early with one of your kids and you were watching a boxing match. As it happened, it was between a white guy and a black guy. And he'd said something about, afterwards you'd said, what difference did you notice between them? And your child said one of them was wearing blue shorts and one of them was wearing red. The fact that they were different skin tones didn't seem to have registered.
Yeah, that was my brother, actually. That was him talking about his two brother. Sons. And I thought that, there's so much in that I think we are, when it comes to these, because we're getting battered and pushed and herded into corners and so on, and counter to what is being done, which is this divide and conquer. Make people angry with their neighbours instead of being angry with the people that live upstairs in the penthouse. I think it's crystallising for people in a unifying way, and I think whatever your nationality, and I think national identities are important. I mean, they're just part of the sort of apparel that people wear that give them a sense of self. I'm not running any of that down. I think people are understanding that whatever your nationality, whatever your creed, whatever your colour, that we're all being got at in the same way by the same relative minority. And I think that's part of what's giving me this optimism in relation to digital ID, because I think this one, they had to roll the dice on this. And as you say, it's nothing to do with Keir Starmer. He's just the monkey in the organ grinder somewhere else. They had to roll the dice on it because, after all, where else are they going to go but where they've gone? But it's not going to work. And I think whether you're Scottish or English, whether you're black, white or brown, whether you're, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist or Zoroastrian or whatever, people can see it. I think increasingly, inevitably, people are seeing it. And that's why I think that I wouldn't put a timer on it and say it'll be over by this time, on this date, but it'll definitely fall over. I agree. I think I can see the same kind of unity starting to come, actually. And I love the idea that Labour and Keir Starmer can unite the kingdom. That would just be this beautiful kind of twist of irony. Because, as you say, as of, not even of late, but just of, the last few years as well, the United Kingdom has been anything but united. And you say, they had to roll the dice on this. Do you think maybe that's why they picked now? I mean, I agree with you, Neil. I think it's backfiring. But do you think they went, this is a time when they're divided, maybe they won't unite against us?
I think, this is where I inevitably end up, sounding, like a conspiracy theorist. But, as I've said elsewhere before, say it once and say it loud, I'm a conspiracy theorist and I'm proud. I align myself with that alternative mindset anyway. But it seems to me that something that isn't in the control of the would-be controllers has happened, as it were, organically. They've opened some sort of can of worms and been frightened themselves by what they've unleashed. They've opened Pandora's box, and what has come out of it is not actually doing for them what they might have thought it was doing. I think there's something existential out there my wife, Trudy, she said it all happened. I mean, she's really just supposing, but she said in 2016 you got the completely unexpected Trump thing, and at the same time, more or less, you got the Brexit vote. Now, those things didn't seem to be entirely working out, and everything that happened since was a punishment beating. To get the population back into its box for those as punishment for those transgressions, and I think for the sake of it, it's useful to think in those terms, because I think it's probably in large part because of the sort of materialist mindset of these people. I think in large part it's something to do with money, but in the broadest sense of what you mean by money, it's to do with wealth. It's to do with the ability to transact. I mean, nothing that these people do is possible without obscene wealth. Everything is dependent upon that ability to create money out of nothing and then control its distribution and flow and volume and all the rest of it. And I think something is out there that threatens their ability to perpetuate that wealth. And I think everything we've seen, whether it's since 2016 or since 2018, or maybe I think possibly that's why they had to trigger the hoax pandemic in 2019, 2020. I think everything we've been seeing recently is smoke and mirrors, while people run in the background desperately trying to regain control of something that I genuinely believe they've lost control of. I think the panic, the chaos, the high temperatures, the madness that everyone can sense now. Everyone's going, it's so weird out there. The world's gone mad, and it has. And it's because any previous sort of generational ability that they had to control the narrative and to offer something that made sense as far as it went, that's gone. I genuinely don't think they're going to get it back.
I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I'm sure if you're watching this, you're very much aware of the growing surveillance state emerging all around us. Whatever you do, you're being watched and your data being harvested. This is why Glenn and Eric Mader formed the Privacy Academy. Join the community designed to help overwhelmed, non-techie people like me learn how to get private online. Head over to privacyacademy.com/Icke and learn how to exit the surveillance state with regular webinars exclusively for you. Now, back to the show. I don't think they got as much through the door during the COVID era as they would have liked as well. I think that they got plenty through. Of course they did, but I think they would like to have been further down the line, and maybe that's what leads to this desperation. But I'm like you, Neil. I proudly call myself a conspiracy theorist. So with that in mind, I kind of look at the uni party of Labour and Conservative, and the same with Democrat and Republican and every other nation. And then I look at Reform, and I see what they say, and I see how they act, and I see who they cozy up to. I see what their stance was during COVID. He's out clapping Nigel Farage. He wanted Tony Blair to be vaccine czar. And I'm like, oh, okay, so the cheek now is not just a left cheek and a right cheek, like the bum's got a middle cheek now. And then I look at all this stuff with digital ID. I look at Labour's obsession with reform and Farage at their party conference. And my spidey senses are saying, is this pushing people towards reform? And actually, is that the goal? Is that the idea, maybe?
I'm an equal opportunity skeptic. For me, whether you put whatever rosette you put on a pig, you're dealing with a pig. It doesn't. It's got nothing to do for me for the individuals involved, the named personalities. It's got nothing to do with that. I think the whole mythos of politics and parliament and democracy and so on is just one of the massive scams, load-bearing myths of the last couple of centuries, really. And it's amongst a whole set of load-bearing myths that are just collapsing. And people come at me regularly. They have done, and said, when are and would you please stand as a reform candidate? And it's anathema to me, and it's nothing to do with reform. In the same way that I would never stand for a political party, Conservative, Labour, I just would not, because it's anathema to me. That whole system, to me, where it wasn't that I ever believed in it particularly. I just went through my life not really paying attention to it. I was never political. I never joined a political party. When it came to general elections, sometimes I voted, sometimes I didn't. I mean, sometimes it literally depended, at the time, going back decades. It depended who my girlfriend was. If she was interested in going to vote in general election, I might have gone and just kept her company. It was that superficial for me. I didn't put anything on it. But, so that said, now when I look on it, whether it's Donald Trump in the White House, whether Democrats and Republicans in Congress, and whether it's the Punch and Judy pantomime of Labour, Conservative, and there's something else, something different's been brought out of the with another with the puppeteer's hands up it and get it to move around and attract people's attention. I just can't invest any of it with any importance because it's not real. The whole organ grinders monkeys metaphor is perfect. I'm not angry with. I can't help it, because it's like you're watching a soap opera or a movie or something, and although it's fiction, you can't help but get really furious about one of the characters because he's the baddie or something. It's only an actor, but you still can't help being swept along by it. And so I do get enraged by Keir Starmer. I do get enraged by whatever Kimmy Badenoch or whatever. But for most of the time, my rational self tells me, what are you doing? It's a panto. He's behind you. Yeah.
It's like getting angry at the WWE wrestling. It's the same kind of thing, isn't it, I guess?
It all depends on suspension of disbelief. And so when people come to me and say, do you believe in reform? Or do you believe in Advance UK? Or do you believe in a reformed Conservative Party? Absolutely not. I'm no more. It has as much relevance to me. I quite often find myself, I'm standing in the queue at the supermarket waiting for my turn at the till, and you look at the magazines, and there's those ones that are like they have soap opera characters, and the magazines are presented as though it's real. So and so in hostage drama, and you look and you think, does anybody buy that magazine thinking that the characters in Coronation Street or EastEnders or whatever are actually real people? And we know they do, because people send christening presents to babies that are born in the story, and they send congratulations when characters get married and so on. But that it's at that level for me. I would no more invest real importance in what Keir Starmer or anybody else was saying than I would, Gail Tilsley or whatever on the cover of a magazine.
Yeah, although Ken Barlow's a nice guy in real life, to be fair.
He might be immortal. That man's been around my entire life.
Yeah, true. I'm the same as you. Like when it comes to reform, I know people that are on the grassroots. Same with Advance UK. These are good people, but in the end, it plugs into the same system. Now, we're told, of course, and it's the government telling us, so we know they're lying, that digital ID won't be used for sinister purposes and all that kind of stuff. The same day they're saying that, George Galloway, the leader of the Workers' Party of Britain, is arrested as he arrives into the country. That's not a great look for the government either, is it? I do wonder who their PR team are from time to time.
Some of it's so cack-handed. So much of it at the moment is so cack-handed now that you try and resist the temptation all the time to get pulled into games of 3D and 4D and 5D chess. You try and get all Machiavellian Sun Tzu art of war on it all, and try and interpret what seems. And then you think, well, maybe Occam's razor actually applies here. Maybe these people are doing stupid things because they are stupid. And somewhere between those two extremes, presumably the truth lies. But yeah, you go, right, you're gonna somebody with the presence, with the history of, with the popular support in all over the world, not just in Britain, of George Galloway and Gatry, and and the kind of tone that he has taken in recent years about, well, all the things he's always been outspoken about, Palestine being, not the least of it, obviously. But why would you go after somebody like that? Why would you do that to someone like that? Send the armed forces to take him in and interrogate him and his wife for hours. And so you think, is it just to enrage? Is it not actually, are they doing it, like Sun Tzu, Machiavelli, are they doing it because it's all part of some clever, sophisticated routine? And I mean, likewise on the other side of the Atlantic, whatever happened to Charlie Kirk on that day, the official narrative that's come out to explain it. I mean, my kids could cross-examine Kash Patel's FBI about that official narrative and back him into a corner on it.
Exactly.
You think, can you not come up with, if you're going to have a patsy, can it not be a convincing patsy? You've got all the resources on the planet, you've got all the money in the world, you've got all the intel and all of the rest of it. To be this cack-handed, is it part of something sophisticated that's supposed to, sidestep my consciousness? Yeah. Or is it just because you've run out of ideas and you're just playing the same old tricks in the same old way?
It is very strange. I mean, the Charlie Kirk thing, I'm the same as you. I don't know what happened, but what I do know is what they're telling me isn't what happened. Apart from that,
but that's the least likely explanation.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, a lifetime after JFK, all the stuff that came out of the Warren Commission and and the magic bullet, that kept on changing direction and all the rest of it and flying about. You go, that's been debunked, and you've come out with another magic bullet.
I know.
Really, you've got to have a lone shooter who you're portraying as somehow deranged and maverick and out with the bounds of normal society, and you've got a magic bullet that seems to do things that defy the laws of physics. Have you learned nothing in the 60 odd years since whatever actually happened to John F. Kennedy?
Yeah, maybe it's being perpetuated by the same people that wrote Rocky, because there's many Rocky films, but they're all the same film. The final question I was going to ask you, Neil, you've already answered. So I was going to ask you a crystal ball question: do we win this? But you've said you think we will, and I absolutely agree with you. So I'm going to ask you one that's totally left field. It's nothing to do with digital ID, and this is more out of my own interest. But I'm hoping that the viewers will find this interesting as well. So obviously your career started in archaeology, didn't it? So obviously then you went on to present Coast. You're looking at historical artifacts and places. Now, I do a little YouTube video, nothing like as big as what you were doing, but I, in the last 2 years, have been sort of clambering into lead mines, into iron mines, and I'm looking around, I'm going, no way, there's no way that this was built by, a pick and a shovel by some, malnourished guys in the 1600s. Have you ever, and like I said, this is left field, ladies and gentlemen, from digital ID, but have you ever witnessed anything in your archaeology days or when you were doing Coast where you've gone, do you know what? The timeline of humanity doesn't ring true to me.
Well, I mean, honestly, Gareth, along with ending, there's the quote's usually attributed to Max Planck, back in the early part of the 20th century, quantum theory and all the rest of it. But I don't think they are actually his words. But anyway, it's to the effect of when you look at things differently, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And along with everything else, although I studied archaeology for 4 years at Glasgow University in the 80s, and I worked as an archaeologist, and it's a great love of mine, the whole just looking at the past, I've completely opened my mind to alternative, because I was given an orthodoxy in the same way that whatever Catholicism is an orthodoxy and Protestantism is an orthodoxy, and some people choose it and live by it. I was given an archaeological orthodoxy, which I accepted. I mean, I was only 17 when I started, so I cut myself a bit of slack. But by now, I look on everything and think, well, I'm not sure. The way in which the likes of Graham Hancock are treated, that they won't just debate him and talk to him like they're interested. He has to be dismissed as a heretic. Puts up my antenna right away. And well, I mean, I didn't. I saw some things that fascinated me, but nothing of that really fits the bill for what you're describing. But in more recent times, obviously, discoveries like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which is the stone monument, the temple site that is completely out of time. I mean, it's thousands of years before it ought to exist. It's like finding a jumbo jet in the Dark Ages. It just shouldn't be there. And there's so much of that. And by now, when it comes to interpretations of all the great icons of archaeology, like the Great Pyramid, like all of it, I'm just open to there being an alternative understanding. And you talk about timelines and chronologies. One thing I'm absolutely certain of is, and I don't have a lot of certainty, is that the timeline that attaches itself or is a product of the archaeological orthodoxy doesn't work for me anymore.
No, I'm the same. And I suppose, I've prefixed this by saying it's nothing to do with digital ID and the political sphere that we've been talking about, but then it's the whole, he who controls the present controls the past, and he who controls the past controls the future. So actually, it's almost like there is a relevance to changing history, and in turn how we view ourselves and therefore how we see ourselves going forward.
Do you know, I think about that all the time, and I think it's, as well as changing it, I think as well, and possibly an alternative way of looking at it is, I think it's just about deciding on a very narrow spectrum of light and bullying one way or another everyone into ignoring everything else. The way, a lot of people live and die by the Bible or the New Testament or the Old Testament or whatever. And yet, at the same time, if they've spent any time on it, they must know that it's all been redacted and edited and rewritten and interpolated by countless men and women down through thousands of years. And yet they're still prepared to, people are still prepared to accept it as the unchangeable work of a divine creator. And I think, I don't know how you can think that when you know it's been tampered with by people, and you know what people are like. They've got agendas, and they do things for bad reasons as well as good. And what we've ended up with is, in the same way that, so they hand you the New Testament, you go, that's it. They go, that's it. That's it. That's the word of God, and everything else is rubbish. Don't look over there at that. Don't pay no attention to the little man behind the curtain. As well as telling you what to think, they just would prefer it if you only looked at a very narrow, very limiting set of books, a canon, and everything else is heresy, or at the very least is just not going to help you out. And by now I'm just thinking, I'm not interested in the canon anymore. I want to read all the other books that for whatever reason I've been told not to look at.
100%. The King James Bible is the one that gets me. Two reasons. One, King James VI of Scotland and the First of England is the same bloke, and that always confused the life out of me in school. And the other bit is, this is a guy that people still read the King James Bible now. He was burning bits of kids at the stake in the North Berwick witch trials. Some of them because they had birthmarks, some because they were practicing, healing and medicine. Like, this is not a guy whose words I want to hang off and live my life by, that's for sure.
I know. It's just what, and I'm not. You know, we've used that as a reference point because we're both of us for good or ill, regardless of it. We've grown up in that paideia. That is that kind of Christian water is the water that we as tropical fish have been surrounded by. You're in it. I'm only using that as a reference point because you could say the same about the Bhagavad Gita. You could say the same about the Vedic text. You could say the thing about the sacred works of Buddhism. It's all where people are prepared to suspend disbelief and go, right, that's it. That's the word of God, the Quran. That's the word of God. But that people have been tampering with that for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got fingerprints all over it. Find it of interest for sure. I mean, it's interesting. It's as interesting as anything else. But don't be trying to tell me that this is the truth and the only truth and everything else is a lie. Don't be telling me that.
No, I agree. I'm the same. But Neil, thank you so much for joining us, mate. It's great to talk to you, and I feel positive from talking to you. And earlier in the show as well, we spoke to a guy called Nicholas in Switzerland, and they've been through it but he's full of confidence as well about beating digital ID. So I'm actually, I hope the people at home are the same as me. I'm coming out of this.
Can I just say, I should have said at the time when you said that thing about the punch in the face. That's perfect, because that waiting with your eyes closed, waiting for the punch, is infinitely worse than the punch.
100%.
No one wants a punch in the face, but it's momentary, and you survive it.
Yeah.
And once it's over, you think, and if you get punched a second, there's no punch hurts you like the first punch you ever get in the face when you're a wee boy. The next punch you get after that, it's just that shock value. So what you said there that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
I think my first punch was my big sister. And also, to be fair, when you're talking about punches, we've seen Keir Starmer on a punch bag, haven't we? So we ain't got much to fear in that front. But Neil, thank you so much, mate. It's great to talk to you again.
And to you. Love it. Anytime, Gareth. Speak again soon.
That's all for the free section of this week's Gareth Icke Tonight. If you would like to continue watching the episode, I'm joined by Swiss political figure and founder of the Mass Vol movement, Nicholas Rinaldi. Nicholas is known for his activism against government measures, particularly during the COVID-19 so-called pandemic. He's led several successful referendums, including 3 against the Swiss COVID laws. With Switzerland narrowly passing a digital ID law in the last few days, it seems he's got another fight on his hands.
Yes, you can win. You can fight the system. You can go into the parliaments and change everything. But the way up there, up this hill, is very steep. And really, you have to be prepared and willing to die on that hill trying.
Please click the link in the description and head over to Ickonic.com to continue watching. You can subscribe instantly for just £1.99. Good night.